You're tuned in to RX Radio.
This will make you the only 3-time guest on the podcast that isn't a co-host. No pressure.
Wow. That's kind of big time, actually.
I think it's serious, man.
You want to talk
People's
about
champ.
LinkedIn profile? I'm putting that at the top.
Do you want to get fired real quick? You're going to joke me? An
The
outward affiliation with me?
three-time I mean, come on now.
Yeah, it's big. It's big. You are, and I said it before, and now I think you're the people's champ. The people's champ, strength and conditioning. He's got his own theme song. This guy comes prepared.
It's Rocky's, but I'll take it.
Nah, Rocky was sampling it. It was a licensing deal. He worked it from you. We all know. I mean, it's been time. It's been time since we last had you on.
It's been a long time, actually. I mean, 2 jobs removed. Yeah. 2 jobs.
And that's what makes you the people's champ is you stay moving, dog. Like there's never a shortage of a story to tell when you're here. That's why you're always here.
I mean, that's a
what's
bold
been
statement
going on
from you. I mean, you're the nomad. You're legit the nomad.
Yeah, but dude, I'm drifting. I'm lost. You're dialed. You're making big things happen. I'm talking on the end. Like it's not. We are not. Respectfully, we are not the same. You are a much better version than me. You know what I am? I'm Walmart Schles is what I am. That's what I am. Who's Walmart?
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Dude, lay it on me, man. The last couple of years, you stay moving. Those of you listening probably familiar with the moves you've made, but like let's hear it straight from the mouth. What's been going on the last couple of years?
When we first started, Stanford. So that was my first appearance. The Stanford days. And then I spent 4 years with the Phoenix Suns as their director of performance. And luckily that was during the heyday. We built that thing up from being bottom of the league to a conference finals championship. So that means a finals appearance and then winning the league. And so that was pretty awesome to be a part of that build. And then, looks like it's taking a different turn, but I'm happy that I was a part of that building process. And then I got to jump into an area that I never thought would actually happen, and that's becoming an assistant coach at the Division I college level. So it's pretty cool. So now I'm at the University of Texas as an assistant coach and the director of player health and performance.
Now, for those of you unfamiliar, this was on your radar from the Stanford days.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this was coming from a mile. I saw it coming from a mile away, this ideology of bringing, technical or technicians on the sports side. So in other words, sport coaches or skill development coaches, and then blending the general physical preparation. So essentially what track and field used to be, which was the track coach. He was the track coach. He was the weight room coach. He was the nutritionist. He was the massage therapist. He was the whole thing, that whole spectrum. But what we've done in this quote unquote high performance model is we siloed every one of those positions. And so now making the jump from being a strength coach to the sport coaching side, where now I get to oversee all of these different entities. You need someone who's fluid and can be able to hopefully bridge these gaps and speak the same language.
What has been the major change having, say, at the player coach, skill coach level that is in the dark to other performance coaches? Like, what is the thing that moves the needle with you holding both job titles?
Yeah, the more and more I'm in strength, the more and more I feel that strength is becoming a limiting factor as far as doing too much strength. Like the reality is, as strength coaches, we think, quote unquote, bigger, faster, stronger. But when you see the best athletes in the world and you realize they can't do our traditional bigger, faster, stronger, you start realizing maybe the bigger, faster, stronger model is actually wrong. And so the strength and conditioning sledgehammer is actually hindering their ability to perform on the court at a higher level. Thus, skill is always and will be the most undefeated aspect of basketball, or sport, I should say. So if we're doing all these quote unquote strength and conditioning means, we got to be really careful that we're not interfering with skill.
Does this position just give you a better vantage point to make that judgment? Like what does now on the strength side, what would a program or what is periodization? How does that, or exercise selection, approach, thought process, how does the nuts and bolts and X's and O's of the actual sessions now in the weight room, how are those changed as a byproduct of you being behind the bench?
Oh man, this is awesome. Okay, so I will say this: strength and conditioning has got a way more simpler, like unbelievably simple. Like our exercise selection per guy might be 5 to 6 exercises, and we just double down. Now, obviously, this is where the practitioner side on the strength and conditioning aspect, okay, we want to find the things that fit these athletes for their individual needs. We can do the force plate, we can do the motion capture, we can do all these things that makes us go, these are the exercise selection to make that guy, quote unquote, bigger, faster, stronger. But then everything outside of that is how is it affecting them and how they move in the constraints, if you will, of their sport. And so the reality is skill, once again, is generally going to be the limiting factor. And that's what's cool about college is you're still developing that skill while simultaneously or concurrently building your body. And so people get confused really quick where they go, oh, well, I did this bigger, faster, stronger, and it made me a better basketball player. It's like, no. You just got better because you had more access and more time on the court. And so nuts and bolts were very, very simple as far as our strength and conditioning aspect because we have objective means and measures of seeing how they are actually doing their skill. So maybe a simpler way of putting this whole thing, we actually have motion capture where we're capturing their ability to shoot. So we start with free throw, then we build out to three-point shooting, catch and shoot threes. And so we now can identify physical limitations in their ability to shoot the basketball. And then that's when we start really understanding, well, if they have wrist flexion issues, they can't load a wrist so they can't shoot a basketball or have the right rotation, then probably doubling down on barbell bench and some of these other compressive strategies might not be the best thing for that athlete to continuously get better at shooting. And I know we probably jumped left and right pretty quick, but the reality is skill, the strength and conditioning can impact skill in a negative way. And that's one thing we never really considered before. We just considered get bigger, faster, stronger, do skill development, and hopefully they both work out together. No. Like we have to identify some things that allow us to go, no, strength and conditioning can't interfere with skill. Let's make that. And once we can do that, then we can do progressive overload. Then we can do all these other fun things. But
does having that seeming subjective metric, does that at the level of the bureaucracy, if those who are listening work in a strength and conditioning, and it's been a big part of the high performance model, I think, is to blame for the emergence of tech in the weight room, because all of a sudden it just like guys were, teams won more games if the athletes were stronger. That seemed to be the correlating trend. And then it got pushed to the point, well, maybe we're losing guys in the weight room. They're pushing it too hard. Load management became an issue because we had stovepiped each sort of silo, if you will, of the load on the court, whether it be during the game, or the load on the court, whether it be in practice, and then the sessions that run in the weight room. Have you had at all difficulty making your metric not like, hey, look, we improved his vertical. Hey, look, we improved his squat. Hey, look, we improved symmetry on a Nord board reading, but like, hey, look, we improved his wrist flexion, or at the very least, we didn't impact his wrist flexion. Like, how is that conversation had between departments within an organization? Like, is that a difficult thing to broach? Because a lot of strength coaches I find throw their hands in the air and go, I did my job, his squat's higher, his thing. It's like, no, the team is to win championships, is to win games. How difficult to the conversation is that to broach when your metrics are no longer purely objective in a sense of weight room things of bigger, faster, stronger?
Right. The biggest thing that we have to understand is that, like you said, it's about the end result. Did we win games, first and foremost? And then we go, did they get better? And then from there, well, how do we identify what getting better actually is? And the first thing we got to do with strength and conditioning coaches, and all coaches, I should say, especially on the sport coaching side, is do no harm. If you have talent and you do no harm, more than likely you're going to be okay. Like, let's just start the most bare bones thing, because I feel like most programs get tripped up on that part alone, right? And it blows me away when you see this over volumization on the technical or tactical aspect of sport, and the same with strength and conditioning. And then if you combine the two or twist them up in some form or fashion, then you got a hodgepodge of finger pointing and everyone's at fault, right? So then, we'll just start there. Do no harm. And then there's this cohesiveness. Okay, do we work well together? Are we able to have a common theme to say this is how we're going to put the ball into the rim or keep the other team from putting the ball into the rim? Cool. Now we can start getting into the weeds. Now we're talking about offensive and defensive analytics. These are the things that we're going to hang our hat on and say this is what's going to make us, our unique brand of basketball. Cool. Got that. Now how do we keep guys available? Bigger, faster, stronger? Sure. We can do our IMTPs. We can do our counter movement jumps on the force plates. We can do our squat rep maxes, which I'm not doing, but whatever program is out there doing that, sure, that's your way of validating how you're important into your role. But the conversations always have to come back to, is this making us win basketball games? And when you turn into, well, someone needs to gain 10 pounds of lean body mass. Whoa. But does that help us win basketball games? Well, but they look like strong, so that means that no. Does that help us win basketball games? So now let's go back to it. Okay, they gained 20 pounds of lean body mass, but their counter movement jump went down, or their RSI went down, their sprinting ability went down, their ability to change direction went down. Well, what are we talking about now? That didn't help us. And so that's where, no matter what metric we're creating, overseeing all these different entities, whether it's skill development, physical development, or medical, they all have to go towards, are they going to be available? And is it going to do no harm? And then more importantly, is it towards winning basketball games? If anything else is subjective, well, if they look this, or, well, we've done this in the past, then no, it's out the window. Just forget about it. Because we can talk about tradition all day and we can talk about some subjective feelings, but the reality is it's got to all come to Rome, and Rome means winning basketball games.
Now, how long removed from your college career are you now, back returned to, and I mean college playing career? Shut up, Berea College. What up?
Oh, playing career.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's so 2009. So we're looking at 14 years.
Okay. Yeah. Now, we could make the case for strength and conditioning and the skill level of basketball being quite progressive, like arguably the most progressive it's been, if any, 15 years in the history since its inception. What's still the same? So now returning on the other side of it and really wearing every hat. I mean, just shy of like cleaning up the locker room and doing laundry. I'm pretty sure you've done everything at the college basketball level. And knowing you probably help out with that too. But what has remained the same in those 15 years? As you said, like, oh, Doc, I had a fucking conversation the other day, and I'm not going to say the Major League Baseball team. And the strength coach was reaching out to me because he was getting chastised, and this, I don't know if this is listening, for push-pull ratios.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's bad. Okay, here's what stayed the same. Toughness is still an unidentified metric and what most people consider the most important aspect. Like, for instance, they got to get tougher. Okay. Measure toughness. Okay. Can you give me something objective to say what toughness means? Nah, they're just not tough enough. And that's still a thing that I'm just like, okay, we can actually calculate toughness, but we got to identify what toughness means. Does it mean, winning the rebounding battle? Cool. All right. Now that means we got to have bigger bodies so that we can keep them off the glass so we can win the rebounding battle. And that means we're tough. Or we get on the ground and dive on loose balls. How many times we do that? Do we win 50-50 balls? There's a lot of ways with all these advanced metrics and ways to calculate it that we can identify toughness. But yet still no one has identified toughness. But yet that is the number one thing always talked about, especially in college basketball, is got to get tougher. And that's one aspect. It's hilarious because no one has the answer. But we'll double down on aspects of, physical preparation, or they're not bigger, or they're not big enough, or we don't practice hard enough, or all these other things. So that's one that's just stayed the same. That and the rim size. Everything else, or the rim height. Everything else completely different. Pace of play. Positionless basketball. I mean, you got bigs that are doing things that they don't even post up anymore. Like you see in the NBA basketball, you don't see post ups deep in the paint anymore. It's very rare to see that. Everything is spread offense basically. And so, in college is adopting a lot of that. Now you still see some more post presence in college basketball, but the skill level is lower and it's more football than it is basketball compared to the NBA. But it's fascinating to see, like you said, like it's basically like brain, like understanding the brain. Like it went from we don't know anything about the brain to all of a sudden we know a lot, but then it's like still we don't know anything.
Right. Now, how has the evolution of how has it been catching up on the I don't want to say learning curve, but you've been on what I would call like the cutting edge of the modern era strength and conditioning coach, right? Like you've kind of with the microdosing, training in season, all of these things were kind of even Jesus. When we were at Stanford, like 10 years ago, maybe give or take.
I want to say almost 8, like or when
8?
I ended. When I ended,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we microdosed almost a decade ago.
Yeah, and that was like kind of on the cutting edge then. I mean, the concept had been around, not as pointed, and guys were lifting in season, but the in vogue strength and conditioning, especially now with like you and Bove, it's like it's kind of NBA is no one honestly. The only strength and conditioning coaches that I heard, and maybe it was just because I was in the rugby, but the only strength and conditioning that was on social media was like rugby strength coaches from Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Right. And so you had been very much on the forefront of this more informed experience movement, but you'd been away from the conventional coaching side of the game as you were an athlete and then into the strength field. What has surprised you about getting back into getting into the coaching side and being behind the bench and viewing the game from a different vantage point after all, and especially at the level that you're viewing it at? What do you look at basketball? Do you look at basketball differently now? And if so, how?
Yeah, I look at basketball completely different in the aspect of I understand how much strength can harm athletes better than like, all right, if they just didn't do any strength training alone, they'd probably be better than what I'm dealing with right now. Like if you I know that's a bold statement, and everyone's going to turn like, nah, he's not a strength coach. Like, oh, he's hating on the field. But like there was this time where early in strength and conditioning for basketball, it was like, no, you don't lift weights in season because it's going to affect your shot. And we all look at that like, dude, that's so silly. But actually, they're not wrong. They're really not wrong. There's a fluidity to this aspect of a finesse thing of shooting where you're generating force through the floor and you're taking it through your body, and then you're doing this finesse movement at the top to make this ball spin like a baseball pitcher, right? Same idea. It's a throwing motion. Just because it's called shooting, that's why they call it a free throw, but it's still a throw. It's just a different type of throw. But there is a coordination and a rhythm and a fluidity that if you just go and do a bunch of bench and then ask a guy to go shoot, the shot is way off. And they can feel that subjectively, you can feel that. And what's nuts is they were kind of right. And at the wrong times, or if it wasn't organized appropriately to have more of an optimal result, yeah, you might be doing more harm than better. And when I started seeing that, I go, okay, then what other old school strength training stuff? Then they beat them up with barbells. Okay, we're going to compress the heck out of these guys, when in reality they need to be long, lean, rhythmic, and they need to be almost like track and field athletes, but they move and change directions, so that's a little bit different. But then we take these football means and methods and try to bring it down, and they go bigger, faster, stronger for guys that are biomechanically not favored to do these things. So you tell me what's going on internally for that expression to help us in the sport of basketball. I go, man, you know what? Maybe it's just machines. Maybe we just strap them to some machines, do some tendon loading protocols, and then everything else is towards skill, which will require a lot of plyometrics, and then just purely sprinting. And I really think that's why I'm saying, like, the stuff that we're doing now is extremely watered down versions of what you would probably see in other strength and conditioning programs. Like, we don't care about clean snatches. I don't care about VBT. I don't care about none of that. I get my VBT from jumping and sprinting on the court. Like, why do I need more expression of power? I don't need all of that. Because the sport itself and how much they do that sport is that. If you're going to do something pure, do it in its most purest form and then get the heck out of the way.
Then you mentioned like the biomechanics and the uniqueness of a hooper as far as just their structure, right? Like the anthropometry of a basketball player is you're training a different species of animal at a certain point. Like I'm around a guy, 6'8". We had a kid from Gonzaga, 6'8", and I was the problems that you solve, because 6'8" is not really that tall when you consider the scale of hoopers now. I mean, I don't know who the tallest guy in NCAA is, but there's a couple guys 7'4", 7'5" in the league, to my understanding. What are the problems that are unique to solving for a body that size?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is we try to put them in a box of training of guys me and your height. We go, oh, okay, you need to squat deep. You need to deadlift from the floor. You need to, and it's like, okay, cool, sure. Like, we all need to bend and move, and full range of motion sounds great, but let's put them in a situation, because their life is a little different than our lives. So machines or support or stability will allow them to get through those full ranges of motion. So then let's take the skill out of loading, and then we can bring them along. Opposed to the other way around, where me and you, we can just grab a barbell and you can kind of teach us, and we can have the motor learning, and that curve is going to be a lot faster than someone who's, they're giraffes with clown shoes. They're huge dudes, man, and you can imagine that running up and down. So there's a coordination factor that's probably going to be more beneficial to them. So they got to own their bodies, and that's where I go to the far extreme, and it can be considered frou-frou, and I know it, but the low-level gymnastics, the crawling and tumbling, like these are things that to me are enough relative strength for those guys in their intro phase before we start like going through the traditional exercise model. Now, with that being said, I still need to get load on the body. So how do I get load for adaptations? Well, from there, we just go from like a different types of isometrics. So everyone from day one, if you can get into a lunge, I can probably get dumbbells in your hands and we can do some extensive isometrics. And then I can load that up as heavy as I can in a short period of time and get adaptations. And I now just take the skill aspect of going up and down, because they might not have the capacity. But yeah, I'm getting load in their hand. I'm getting load into their system. And then I'm cleaning everything else up with the human movement or sprinting and coordination and the aspects of sport that they actually need to perform. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. It kind of lends into my next question, which is when it comes to training modalities, you've always been one that, you put stuff up, people go nuts for it. Like, you're definitely a trendsetter in that space. What are the things that get you most excited? Like, okay, we're still talking in the weight room, but we're talking integration of skill. What are the things that you look at and go, okay, like I really like, we talked, barbells ain't it, especially for, guys their size, probably not a great modality, at least as often as it may be programmed in other sports. But what are the modalities in your weight room that you're like, if you train hoopers, these are the things that you probably should have in your weight room?
I like some form or fashion of a hack squat. I love a Smith machine. You're going to laugh. You're like, Jesus, Cory, like, are we back in Nautilus, back in, in the 90s? And it's like, well, to a certain degree, yeah. Kettlebells are always going to be found in my weight room. I got this crazy cable pulley system that legitimately goes from the length of the weight room. Like, it's unreal. It's got this, like, 4-to-1 ratio or 1-to-4, whatever it is. But it's unbelievable. I like loading the horizontal vectors a little bit more with these guys than I've traditionally done. And then, it's simple, like trap bars, stuff like that. But if I had my hands on everything, I like the idea of some 1080s. I like the ability to objectively see what they're doing. And then that's when you can say, hey, like, it looks weird. This is why it looks weird. You can't get in positions. Let's get you strong in these quarter positions and these full range of motion positions before we just load you up with a barbell and you figure out how to go through a full range of motion. Pretty weird. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to think anything else. Nothing crazy though.
I've seen you do a lot with ramps that other people I haven't seen.
Okay.
Talk about it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we talk about all the time, and you see it in bodybuilding where they change the grips, right? Bodybuilders, I'm telling you, look back at bodybuilding. If you're truly like a performance coach, take yourself back down the bodybuilding evolution, right? Like, okay, everybody starts as bodybuilders, then they go to powerlifters, then they go to Olympic lifting, then they go to sprinting, and then that's like their whole evolution. Let's bring it back to bodybuilding. And the reason why is because we're looking for load, right? And the best way to get load is through stability. So the machines help us a lot, but when you're trying to specifically target areas, bodybuilders, they're the best people in the world as far as identifying how to do certain things. So they're finding different torques, they're finding different grips, they're finding different moment arms that allows them to get these unbelievable contractions. Great. How awesome would that be for our Jurassic clown shoes to be able to put them in these positions? Oh, that's how that muscle works. Oh, awesome. So anyways, back to that. We do all this with our hands, but no one's thought about moving the floor, what their feet interact with. So we change all these grips for our hands to do exercises, but we never change the floor. And the only examples that are pretty easy that people are probably thinking in their head right now, oh, you mean elevate their heels on a squat? Absolutely, for sure. Elevate the heels, now we can squat deeper, fantastic. But what about at the hip? And then you can go, okay, step-up box, cool, now I can do step-ups or DC blocks, reverse lunge off an elevation, awesome. But now let's talk about IR and ER of the hip. So what if we did ramps going towards each other, like the old school Polish boxes? So in other words, the ramps make a ditch or the ramps make a rooftop. And now I put my feet in that. So now I'm in inversion, knee version, or pronation, supination. And now I'm changing how the feet interacts with the floor. Now go through those traditional exercises. For example, you take two ramps, you place them towards each other, you put your feet on them on a sumo stance, and then now you do kettlebell swings. I'm telling you, the experience is unbelievably different. So when I have my athletes do kettlebell swings, most of them do this quote-unquote inverted, if you will, kettlebell swing, and they get way more access into their hip than they would traditionally with their feet flat on the ground. So instead of just changing our hands and changing our angles, we change the angle of their feet and how, because it's a change of direction sport. How do you think Kyrie Irving gets these crazy angles? Right? Paul George, all these guys, they have this unbelievable hip internal rotation, but when we take them into the weight room, we just negate all that, right? To get these angles in a safe way, in a controllable way, to do it more often, what if instead of changing, the implement, you just change the floor? And now you can play around with different foot positions, widths, angles, and that's going to allow you to access the hip in different ways.
Do you see like a universal presentation of the foot? Like something about, it's not something, but like the basketball players' feet are world famous disgusting. This one kid last week, you go in the draft, I asked him what size his shoe was, big cat, and I was 6'8" dude. And I was like, what size are your feet? He goes, it depends if my toes are flat. I'm like, I've been in this for a minute. I've never had that answer. It depends on dude, what the fuck are you talking about? Dude pulls out these fucking Velociraptor feet, not even. And I was like, yo, what? Like, low-key, I've never seen feet like that. And he flattens them out. He goes, when they're flat, I wear a 16. But when they're like this, I wear a 14. I'm like, what the fuck was that?
That's pretty different.
Are there consistencies that you see as far as limitations from the foot in basketball players specifically, and how does that kind of express up and down the chain?
Most of the time, the best athletes I've seen, whether it's a professional level or the collegiate level, they generally present more of a flat foot. And you can go down the argument of they're preloaded, right? They're in pronation, they're ready to rock. And okay, like I'm okay with that to a certain degree. Now, also, I don't know if it's just being involved in the sport long term, and you have roll of the dice getting hurt. But these guys, they tend to get hurt very often too, or they always have some type of ailments. So the reason for that is it could be because they're playing on the surface that they're playing on all the time, or they're in the sport long term, or it's the presentation of their feet. I have not ran into a presentation where I go, that's the one. That's the one that's going to keep you healthy forever. I haven't seen it. But the ones that I've seen that last and move the best, last generally the longest, and have unbelievable expression a lot of hip internal rotation, a lot of tibial internal rotation and external rotation, and then more of a presentation of a flat foot. Everyone else, it's a hodgepodge of maybe, but not really. Like, can you just own these positions? Do you actually, like, instead of having a flat foot, do you actually have an active flat foot? Because what you'll see is, like, I haven't seen many guys with arched feet like myself. Like, I haven't seen that high arch foot do extremely well extremely often. I actually see the exact opposite. Those are the ones that I tend to see go off the rails kind of quick, especially in a sport like basketball. But I haven't seen anything universally where I'm like, that's the ticket right there. I just know if you have it more than average internal hip rotation and more than average tibial internal and external rotation, you're more than likely better off than most.
Now, what does preparation look like, being in the weight room side and on the skill coach side as an assistant? Like, game day, walk me through a full day of, like, your life wearing two hats with, like, a tremendous amount of responsibility and a tremendous amount of pressure. How does the process of you athlete facing evolve throughout the day? Like, what is that experience like for the athlete? What is it like for you?
Well, first off, I have a tremendous staff that helps me out so that I could try to do this to the best of my ability. He works as an assistant for me, but he's really the women's head basketball strength coach, Zach Zillner. Awesome dude. One of the most awesome personalities you'll ever meet, too. So he assists me a ton in the weight room. We also have 3 interns that are in and out, and then we have 2 sports scientists that are in and out. So in my weight room alone, just on the performance side, at any given time, I have 5 to 6 people in the weight room with me at any given time. That is more resources than I technically had in the NBA. So that allows me to operate and flow in and out and to be on the court, in the weight room, and being able to be in both doors. Then on the basketball side, our director of player development, KJ Conklin, awesome dude, really high-level thinker, especially when it comes to most of our motor learning strategies and how we're implementing our motion capture stuff. He's incredible. And so if I don't have those entities, I wouldn't be able to flow. So now as far as the athlete face time, I mean, it's pretty simple. We go into film. That's when we're all together. Then when we get onto the court, we go into our quote-unquote movement preparation for the day. That starts with me, and that's when we're doing a lot of our warm-up strategies, but with a basketball. Now, we utilize different types of basketballs. We have the weighted basketballs. I use those primarily. There's multiple reasons why. The thought process I had was, like shot putters, they have different size, different weights, and when you have anything just slightly different, then it changes how you organize and how you move. And so that's where, to me, I was like, okay, different types of basketballs actually make a lot of sense, because they still have to, if you have a slightly heavier ball, your orientation is going to be different. So if you just get exposures of that, it's kind of the same but different, right? Every rep's different. So it allows you to express yourself in different ways. So we do most of our basketball prep warm-ups with me, and we go through a ton of in-play stuff where we start off with isometrics, then we go into more stationary dynamic, then we go into locomotion, then we go into some pretty dynamic and some pretty wild-looking stuff. I mean, we're taking the basketball, punching it in multiple directions while sprinting straight ahead, taking our eyes off target, running, hoping that we're anticipating where we are in space. We do a lot of things that are neck up and neck down, and then we just keep it consistently different. We just want to expose them to different things all year round, because it's going to allow them to, just have their tissues hit different things at different speeds, and hopefully develop a robustness other than just doing the same thing over and over. Then they go into the technical aspect, and this is where we're transitioning to KJ, who's taking our guys through their individuals. Then the tactical side. I don't touch the tactical side with a 10-foot pole. Like, no, when it comes to ball screen coverages and calling out, no. I'm just, if it has something to do with the human body, which means skill and physical, sure. But when it comes to tactical, nah, I'm out. I'll let you guys handle that. Then we go through our practice. Then we go into our weight room sessions. On a typical game day, we'll have our low-minute guys hoop in the morning. So we'll go weights, hoop, and then pre-game, our high-minute guys go through their preparation, most of their motor learning, high speed, high velocity, high variability. So we're continuously getting better as an athlete as the season goes. Then we go into our warm-ups, game, and then post-game, our high-minute guys are hitting their traditional lift.
Yeah. Has that been a tough sell? Like the idea that I would assume up until this point, they're not used to training on game days. How has that been? And obviously, just instantiating that into the culture. What is do you have any a highlight reel of the first time that a kid walked off the court? You're like, all right, in the weight room, and say, what? Like, what is that?
Right.
What has that process been like in onboarding that as a new way of training for a lot of these guys?
Yeah, when it starts, I never surprise anybody. So like I make sure that it's like weeks in advance before our first game, before I was like, hey, just so you know, this is what we could do. And I give them two options. Option A, hey, you're going to come in the morning. We'll knock out our lift in the morning. No problem. You'll have to get up earlier. You might have a shorter breakfast. Might not be as fun, but hey, we'll knock out our lift in the morning so you have plenty of time to recover for the game. Or you can do your regular routine. I'll just see you right after. It's only 10 to 15 minutes. Your choice. Oh, man, that option B sounds really good. Cool. Option B it is. It's always been option B, but thank you for making it option B. And so that's how I generally go through this, because the reality is if we're trying to prepare these athletes for the next level, that is the demands of professional basketball. You play 3.5 times a week. Your higher, quote-unquote, stressors from a weightlifting standpoint are going to have to be done around those game days. Can't be between, or else you're just never really going to recover. Downward spiral, we all know what that looks like. And the cool part is, coming from the Suns and the success we had, and the viral videos of us training post game, it's like it wasn't a hard sell at all. It was like, no, that's what the NBA guys do. It's like, yeah. I mean, it is now, but there might have been a time where they were doing it, but not as consistent as us. And now it's heavily mediated now. I mean, you see that the Timberwolves were doing a big post game lift after they swept the Suns, and it's now becoming like a part of the norm as far as lifting post games in the NBA. So the college guys, if that's the goal, hey man, you might as well get used to this now.
Do you see that being the way it goes? Do you see that trends that trickle down from pro into NCAA? Are there anything that NCAA teams that are doing that is groundbreaking and building up into the league, or is the league really the point of validation for a lot of best practices in strength and conditioning?
I think it's a trickle-down effect, but the reality is a practice-based model versus a game-based model, right? Like, there's things that in the NBA I could never get to. Now, don't get me wrong, the thing that I'm most proud of is I never adopted the NBA norms. I did it my way, and I was very proud of that. Like, I spent 4 years in the league. I was going to do it my way. If it sucked, it sucked. If it was great, it was great, but I was not going to just bow down to this, you got to get 15 lifts in a month or something like that. It was something crazy. Like, that was the tradition. I've seen NBA facilities where they actually had a checkboard where you just check your name to say that you lifted, and you had to get 15 of them or 14 of them in a month, or else you get fined. And literally, I've heard stories where guys will come in, just hit some curls, check their name off the lift, and that was part of it. And I'm like, nah, we're not. We're not going to do that. Like, and luckily, it all worked out extremely well. But now, vice versa, what's really cool about college basketball is you got younger athletes, they're more robust, they're more plastic, so you're able to really challenge some. How should I say this? You're able to introduce things, and it gets adopted immediately. You don't have to like work on this whole like spiel and spend years developing something. No, we're doing it tomorrow. Like, you know what? I think that's a good idea. We're doing it tomorrow. We're all going to like it. Let's have fun. So that's what's really cool about college, and that's where I promise, like, this human thing, you're going to see a lot more people like playing, like tag, like what else? Spike ball. You're going to see a lot more of that stuff come up. More reactive, like games or in games within games. You're going to see that come up from college to the professional level, because you're gamifying training, and the way to get guys to buy in more and like actually have intent with what they do is gamify it in some form or fashion. And it's just hard to do that at that level.
Do you ever have, now that you have the freedom to kind of carte blanche, like, oh yeah, no, tomorrow it's on, let's go. Do you ever have trepidation around like, introducing, because that's where I think a lot of strength coaches get tripped up, is like, there's a comfortably numb region of operating standards and strength and conditioning, where it's like, you don't think you're doing any harm, you're probably not doing any good, but your guys are getting a little bit better in the objective data that some athletic director or performance director is going to look at, so you can keep your job. So I'm just going to kind of exist in this babysitting space for a little bit. And it's like, hey, dude, yeah, rightfully so. I freak out when I know how much some of my guys make in the off season, and I'm like, don't hurt them. And it's like, they like doing this, and it's like, well, we're gonna do spike ball, rolls an ankle, like, oh fuck, where's Cory? He's just running for the exit. Like, have you ever had a like trepidation around introducing this new stuff?
Bro, I've had every situation go wrong. Like, here's a great one. All right, so we're at the practice facility. This is my time in the NBA. At the practice facility, and we have a very low day. And coach goes, Cory, we want to make it fun. Cool, let's make it fun. We have this brand new turf. It's beautiful, and it's in the middle of football season. Cool, we're going to run some routes as far as one of our days, just hanging out in the weight room. So we're all running routes. Everyone's having a good time. I got this thing dialed down. I mean, I spent all night making sure that I'm like, okay, check every box. There's no way anyone can get hurt. No way. No way. Running routes, just having fun, changing the coverages. Guys are calling it out. Great time. And then all of a sudden, it takes one player walking in and going, yo, why aren't we checking each other? I'm like, whoa, what do you mean checking each other? No, we got to play defense against each other. We got to, no, that's not what we're doing. And sure enough, it ended up in a broken nose. In the middle of the season, broken nose, playing football. And a shoot around, too, as before a game. And I'm like, oh, God. Yeah. So, but with that being said, for me, I will, because I'm so confident in what I do and how much everyone knows the amount of work I put in for like what I do, I know that if things do go bad, I'm going to get the benefit of the doubt, or B, if they're really tripping to that point, then I'm in the wrong place. So for me, I just have an unbelievable amount of probably arrogance to confidence ratio that just lets me go like, no, I know why I'm doing this, and I know it's in the best interest of this athlete. So if it goes wrong, well, it's going to go wrong for him in some idea anyways. Rather, it's going to go wrong on the court, but this preparation is what's going to allow them to be better on the court. Then that's what we're going for. And dude, you've seen my setup. I mean, we traveled around a box that I made with a blacksmith or whatever, and that thing looked like it came from Mad Max, and I set that up on a baseline every NBA arena, and guys were lifting on it pre-game, and it was wild looking. And to me, I'm like, no, man, this is the best interest of my athletes. Now, is this thing a prototype of a prototype of a prototype that if it broke or someone got hurt on it, I'm probably out of the league? Yeah, for sure. 100%. But the reality is, guys are training, and they're training consistently. If I set it up on the court, they can't miss me. And because of that, I know we're going to have a better overall like health and performance initiative that it wouldn't happen any other way. Like, I didn't care at that point.
Man, when you had that box and it was mid-COVID and we were in Miami and I'm down in like you see, like you were like dabbing up the security guard so I could get into the hotel so we could hang out for a minute. Mm-hmm. Peak COVID. And I'm in like the basement of a Four Seasons, and you got the medieval box. I'm like, did you use this as a battering ram to get in the front door? Like what the? And you're like, yo, the fucking slam board comes out here. This is a SWAT rack. Here's a jump box, and all. Like, I gotta have kids so they can have kids, so I can have grandkids, so I can tell them about Uncle Schles and his fucking crazy ass box. And I was like, this is, dude. I think about that like once a week.
It was absurd. What was crazy was, of course, at first everyone's like, bro, what are you doing? And then after year 2, all of a sudden more guys are lifting guys on the court pregame. Year 3, more equipment's making its way to the court. Year 4, and that's where I'm like, hey guys, like I know why I'm doing it. And because I know why I'm doing it, I don't care what it looks like. The guys feel what's going on. And as long as they feel it, I know that if something did happen, they wouldn't go, man, yeah, Cory had me tripping on some random stuff. Nah, Cory's got my back because Cory's trying to make me better. Doesn't matter what it looks like. And that's where, for me, I didn't care what environment I was in. I'm going to make it my way. and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability because I know it's what's in the best interest of the athlete. After that, man, hey, it is what it is. If the dice don't fall my way, then I'm out. That's cool. But I know I feel damn good about everything that I've done.
What would you change if you were to tomorrow take on the same position you take, but not in basketball, but in football?
Oh, so like the NFL or college football? Because that
NFL.
would be two totally different answers. Okay. If the NFL called me,
let's run it out.
Okay. So if the NFL called me and said, "Hey, Cory, we need you to come be the strength and conditioning," what I would do is I would hire. I need my staff. First thing I need a true-blooded like college football guy to keep me like, hey, these are the constraints of college football. I need to understand those constraints. Then it's like putting together like the Ocean's 11 or whatever. Like you're putting together your crew. Like my number one dude is my number one like college football guy, like 100% tried and true on it. Then sports scientist, I need somebody that's just nerdy as can be, and it's so far removed from college football that no one even like maybe cricket. I don't care. Someone completely different. But the reason why I'm surrounding myself with these different entities is because I need to know the landscape, but I also need to know the capabilities and what it could be. And so coming in with a fresh set of eyes and not understanding the traditions or understanding what it is, I think you can come up with some really, really, really cool stuff. But at the same time, you better know what you're talking about, or else you can't advance or debunk these traditions. And so that's why you got to have your guys. But NFL, I would go more basketball route. I would go exactly kind of what I did in the NBA. It would be more concierge. I'll do everything I can to make it an experience where it's leaderboards against themselves, not against other people, so they can understand their development. And then in college, it's leaderboards against each other. Like, nah, we all competing. Like, no, you're going to know your metrics, and he's going to know your metrics, and you guys are going to go fight for those metrics. And like, all right, you want to bump them up? Then, hey, this guy did it better than you. What are we going to do about it? But the NFL, it'd be different. It's about the leaderboard against them. That'd be the biggest differentiator.
So what about like, and maybe it's too far removed, but what about at the level of like physical preparation, training? Because basketball, and you kind of said, basketball now, especially at the pro level, like there's not that post up big man hard in the paint. Everyone plays like positionless basketball. That is the exact opposite of football in the sense that there's potentially 6 different sports going on at the same time as when it comes to energy systems, when it comes to shapes, when it comes to like, how would you manage that dynamic? And what do you think from an outsider's perspective, football lacks in creativity, novelty, motor learning?
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely break it up into your skill guys are going to do some wild stuff. Like the skill guys, I've trained them more like hoopers. Like 1,000%. And then I keep your line. I'd probably keep them probably where they're at. Those are the guys that are, I mean, they know at the end of the day, there's only 1 or 2 things to do. It's nothing too crazy, but your skill guys, like this might be a little too much, but like I like Patrick Mahomes stuff. Like what Straup's been doing with him, they do a ton. I mean, the amount of variety and variability. Like when you get to a certain level of mastery, the only way to push that mastery is to do some pretty wild things. And that's where you can always introduce that, no matter if you're a skill guy to offensive and defensive lineman or whatever, you can still introduce some of the crazy human capacity stuff. That's probably the one thing that I could say, yeah, I would do that day one. And if it's cool, it's cool. If it's not, it's not. But that's the problem is it's still the same problem that you see in all professional sports. It's a lack of preparation, and then they just dial up everything so fast, and you're going to see the spike in injuries. If you're truly doing football, coming from no football background, you're going to need 3 years. You're going to need 3 good years, and you're going to need that first year is going to be hell on wheels. And you're going to need 3 years to understand what's what. Like when I came from the same sport, college to basketball, and that was such a learning curve. It was ridiculous. So that's where now from professional coming back to college, now we got NIL. Now we got free agency basically. That's a totally different game. I had a learning curve year one as well, and I'm coming down, right? Even though I'm leveling up, I'm coming down. And that was an unbelievable learning curve this year. Now going to a completely different sport, yeah, it takes some time.
Is there a sport that they call and you hang up. Like, nope, not a chance. No, I'm not stepping into this fucking snake pit.
Oh, team or individual?
Doesn't matter.
Don't matter. Soccer seems lame. There's awesome things about soccer.
Sorry, Meg. Sorry, Meg.
I mean, to me, I don't get excited about soccer. I just don't. There's like training soccer players individually, 100%. Team sport athlete or a team sport situation, I wouldn't feel like too like awesome about it. I probably wouldn't pick up that phone and say, "Yo, like I can't wait to do this." Nah, I'd probably go like private or see what the military's about.
And what about individual, like individual sport athletes where you're like, I can't. And it sounds like this shit is made up.
Anything long distance.
Hold on. You have experience with long distance swimmers, no?
Yeah.
No, not like I don't even know if we can disclose it, but like not long distance swimmers.
I was
the long distance swimmer. What was go?
No offense to Katie. So Kayla Decky, I got to train her for 2 years.
Okay, I'm gonna stop. No, because I would fuck you because I remember this. What was when she started training? I remember seeing you were showing me videos of her and Simone, and then she did a race and she broke a world record by how many minutes?
Oh, it was nuts. I don't remember how many minutes, but like when
it was minutes.
Minutes. But what was crazy is when they both came in, they were just unloaded. Like it was almost like everyone was too scared to load them because of who they were and because of the sport they played. So it's very untraditional to lift heavy anyways. But like Simone, for example, when we loaded her up, like, oh my gosh, she put on like 10 to 12 pounds of lean body mass. She looked like a linebacker. And everyone was yelling at me because they're like, Cory, she's too dense. She looks too. I'm like, what's her times? Well, I mean, it's 0.3 of a second faster than her. And I'm like, she's a sprinter. And I go, so once again, like going back to what we talked about in the very beginning, is it making them better at the sport? Like, are they winning? Are they winning more? And then when you come to a stopwatch sport, is the stopwatch moving? That's what matters. Like, it's objective. Like, I don't want to be a nerd and all about analytics, but dude, at the end of the day, it's about the thing. If it's making them faster, I don't care if they look like an elephant. Like, they're faster. But with Katie, that was the exact opposite situation. The poor girl walking on land scared me, because she just wasn't very athletic in the sense of what me and you understand as athleticism. But you throw her in no gravity situation, she's the best athlete in the world. And so that was a very different training.
And it's crazy to think like they're underloaded more than a normal athlete would because they don't have to manage gravity or 6 times less the force of gravity, whatever the math is on that. Right. So like the fact that introducing load, I remember like hitting the floor of the weight room in Maples Pavilion when you told me like the time. I was like, is this a new event? Is she the second person to do the race? What do you mean she broke a world record by minutes?
By minutes, man. But to me, that's not like, hey, Cory's a great strength coach. It was like, no, Cory did progressive overload on very simple 2 to 3 different exercises and made it fun to where people had more intent to what they were doing and they enjoyed their experience. Thus, they felt like it was helping them. There's more neck up than we give credit for. And I'm not to go down the whole like sports psych route because I ain't touching out the 10-foot pole either. But there is something to, I'm enjoying this experience, I go harder. And there's something to it. And if you can create an environment where people they come into it and they just feel better, and they walk away feeling better, shit. Because I'm done with the days of if they left the weight room throwing up, then I did my job. Like, I've been so done with those days because I'm like, they never experienced that in sport. But yet, for some reason in our heads, we have to create this toughness or this whatever to put people in these unbelievably extreme physical conditions that's actually counterintuitive to any type of adaptation that would make them better. Like, unless you're the Chinese weightlifting team forcing guys to, throw up so they can – that's a totally different subject. But the reality is it's like, no, they got to know they're getting better. And my mantra in my weight room is you got to leave feeling better than when you walked in. And it doesn't matter if we had a conditioning day. And it doesn't matter if we had, a stupid, heavy, high volume day. You should still walk out there feeling like you can go hoop. Because the way we train, the frequency you train at, if I do anything more than that, then that means I'm counterproductive to what they're doing on the court. And that's where we screw up as SNC. We think our shit is the most important, and we just, skill just has to work with that. Technical aspect of sport just has to work with that. Tactical aspect of sport just has to work with that. Because I look back at some of like my old training where we have like 2 to 3 days a week in season. Well, I got to get that training volume and intensity in. And then you watch them the next day at practice and they're just glued to the floor. Man, I just ruined the thing that actually matters, which is basketball. And now, that's where this evolution came from. I'm just like, you know what? Someone needs to architect this aspect from the sport coaching side, not the S&C side. And when you can get onto the sport coaching side and just have these conversations and this bandwidth to be able to flow in and out, then hopefully you're going to have, a better outcome for the athlete, which will obviously have a better outcome for the organization.
What's the opportunity that you run towards? What's like that? I hope my phone rings, whether it's an individual athlete in a particular sport, individual sport or team. Like what is like the, I think this sport needs a paradigm shift, or this particular athlete, if I could get my hands on him, or both.
I've been fortunate, and that's another reason why I came to Texas. The alumni here is unbelievable. I mean, bro, we have so many NBA athletes, current NBA athletes, and I'm very fortunate to work with one extremely high-level one, and they come back in the offseason, and they come train because we've created an environment for these guys to come train, and we have resources that they're not having access in their own NBA organizations, so that allows them to want to come back, and we're creating this environment, and we call it the basketball incubator. So we're bringing in academia and research, and that's where we're talking about our motion capture and our biomechanics and all this. And then we have, our pros. And these are guys, when we mix them all together with our current organization, our current players in our program, everybody gets better. And it's really, really dope when you can mix all of those three things because you can't be done anywhere else. The reason why, Austin's a dope city. Texas has great NBA alumni. And we have a staff that can make these summers crazy. So I get the best of both worlds. I still get to train NBA guys, and I get to be involved with them, not only in their off season, but through their in season with consulting. But I also get to go home and see my daughter every night. It's pretty dope.
And you got to deal with me in early July because I'm coming out for a visit. And you're going to have to fucking burn the place down to get me out.
Dude, I'm telling you, like I hope it's impressive because it's something that I think is going to be really, really special, and to get your eyes on it, like I think it's going to be really, really cool. And plus, I hope that you criticize the absolute nines to it. The reason why, because I respect you as a professional and as a practitioner. Now you can just sit there with that, Cory. No, I respect the mind of Jordan Shallow, and I'm really excited to see it in Austin, Texas, so you can poke holes in everything that I'm doing. And then I can get better.
I never thought I'd be excited to come to Austin. It seemed like the same bullshit me and you ran away from. It seemed like California just picked up a move, and you're like, "Yo, come to Austin." I'm like, I'm there, dude. When? Tell me when. I was like, dude, I swear I would never go. I'm gonna eat keto bars and start swinging maces around. Like, no, but dude, I'm here for it.
Hey, I will say this though: the food, unbelievable. Oh,
Trust.
Unbelievable. And
Trust.
Income tax. Come on now, man. Taxes are nice in Texas.
I got to get on that, man. You need someone to mop up the floors. I'm getting hosed. Companies in California. I'm living in Canada. Dude, I'm getting it twice. It's brutal out here.
Oh, my God. I didn't even think
I don't want to talk about it. That's all this podcast is about. No, we're going to end this on a high note. Dude, I appreciate you always taking the time. We're going to run it back again when you've changed the world of strength conditioning yet again.
Run it
back. So special thanks to our co-host on the show now, Cory Schlesinger. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you taking the time, and I'll see you in a few months.
Looking forward to it, brother.